Hey guys, Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales here. Are you sitting on your garage floor right now struggling to get the pedals off of your bicycle? Well, you found the perfect video. In today's tutorial, we're going to teach you how to remove and install the pedals on your bicycle. So hopefully you already know what the pedals are, but if you don't, they're the part that your foot sits on that connects onto the crank arm just here that you pedal around on. If you've watched someone do this before and they've made it look really easy and then you've gone and tried and it's quite difficult, it could be possibly one of three things. It might be that the pedals are just incredibly tight. It might be that perhaps you're turning the tool the wrong way, or perhaps you're even using the wrong tool. So the first point that I want to hit here is to make sure that you have the right tool for the job. There's three universal tools that I tend to see with most pedals. We have a 6mm Allen key, an 8mm Allen key, or a 15mm spanner. It's usually going to be one of those three options that you'll need. So how do you actually know what tool that you need to take the pedals off? Well, if we had a spanner, we would need a 15mm spanner and it fits into sort of the neck of the pedal arm here. With the spanner, I recommend trying to get a cone spanner. They're quite a bit thinner than what these sort of normal spanners are, which can sometimes struggle to fit into the neck there. So option A is a 15mm cone spanner. Option B is the 8mm Allen key. I tend to find these ones on more of the higher end pedals, some of the multi-$100 pedals, really common on racing road bikes or racing mountain bikes. So if you need an 8mm Allen key, I don't know how else to say it except you'll know that it will fit because it just fits perfectly right in there. And the third option is that you might need perhaps a 6mm Allen key. 6mm is obviously 2mm smaller than an 8mm. Now it's worth noting here as well that often when we have the 6mm Allen key, sometimes you'll also see the 15mm spanner on there as well, so you could use either tool. And as an added bonus, something else that you'll need is a little bit of grease when you put them back on, so that in 5 years' time when you go to undo them, they're not seized in place. Now, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that you have the correct size Allen key or spanner for the pedal that you've got. If I was perhaps to use a 5mm Allen key inside of a 6mm bolt, I'm gonna turn it and it's just gonna spin on itself and it's gonna ruin the pedal, and that can make everything so much more difficult. And the second thing is I strongly recommend getting a nice long tool so you can have a lot of leverage off of that pivot point there. If you've got a really short tool, for example, your little multi-tool here, which is lovely because it fits into your pocket, but you can't get quite as much leverage. Yes, it'll get you out of trouble, but in this video, we're trying to talk about how to make it easy. And the best way to make it easy is to have as much leverage as you can have. So now we're ready to take our pedals off. Step one is we're finding out what tool that we need. On this one here, I can see it's one of the high-end racing road bike pedals. So that one's gonna use this 8mm Allen key. So I'm gonna get my 8mm Allen key tool and I'm gonna put it in the back of the pedal there, and I'm gonna make sure it goes all the way in. It's not just a little bit in because you could round it. So make sure it's as far in as it can be, and it's sort of pointing towards the back of the bike on like a, I'm gonna call that like a 45-degree angle. So now that I've got the tool all the way into where it needs to be, now I need to work out which way to turn it. Now heads up, everything that you've learned about tightening and loosening bolts is wrong here, because the way that we're gonna turn it is going to be different for both sides, as in one side it's righty-tighty and the other side it's lefty-tighty. None of it makes sense. So I have one easy way to remember it. I stand behind the bike and I put the tool in facing backwards, not facing forwards. I have it facing backwards like that. The crank arm is facing forward. The crank arm is not back here, it's here. And I'm gonna be pushing down and around. I'm not gonna be pushing over the top, I'm just gonna be pushing down and around. And then if I come down here, now I'm gonna be pushing down and around like that. Again, not up and over, down and around. And I just felt it go loose. And now it's easy enough just for me to loosen the rest of the way. Now that we've got this side loose, I'll finish taking it off and then we'll jump across to the non-drive side, because like I was saying, it's the opposite. So now that we're ready to do the non-drive side pedal arm, it's gonna be the exact same thing as what we just did, but completely mirrored. So we're gonna grab our crank and we're gonna have it facing forward, the same as we did before. We're gonna get our tool, and this example here happens to use a 6mm Allen key or the 15mm spanner. I'm gonna put the Allen key in the back side here so that it's facing sort of backwards. If I could get further, there we go, it's even better. And then I'm gonna be pushing down and around, and then it's as easy as that. And then we'll just keep loosening it until the pedal comes all the way off. So it's the exact same action on both sides, but it's completely mirrored. If you're really struggling to get your pedals off and they're just seized in place, here's my 3 tips to help you get them off. First tip would be make sure that you've got the right tool for the job. I don't mean necessarily make sure you have a 6mm rather than a 5mm and all those sorts of sizes. That all goes without saying. You have to have the right tool, but more about having leverage, having the longest tool that you can have, because that way, as you're pushing down on that tool, you're getting a lot more sort of power than what you would out of just a short little tool. Second tip, WD-40. I know that we don't use it on bikes a whole lot often, but you could just dribble that onto the thread there and just let it soak for a few minutes or an hour or something like that. And that might help just sort of break it up a little bit. The third one that I've got is to flip the bike upside down. Now this means that everything is upside down from what we've taught you in this video. So think ahead. I know this is gonna sound weird, but the way that I kind of remember it is I like imagine myself on the bike and then I try and remember which way the tools are going. So I don't know, that's how it works in my head. If I had this one here, for example, again, if I'm like underneath the bike, I'm gonna be pushing up. So I could put my foot onto the saddle there and sort of pull the opposite direction of what I was before, which happened to be up, and then I can help take the pedal off. But truth be told, if it's just really not coming off and the pedals are just that tight, you can either go to your local gym and find the biggest, strongest guy or girl and ask if they can help you out, or even just the local bike shop. Hopefully they know what they're doing. So now that our pedals are off, we've got to put our new pedals back on. Step number one is work out which one's the left one and which one's the right one. Hopefully, if you look really closely, there should be a letter L for left and a letter R for right. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think. The second thing that I want to mention when we're putting our pedals back on is to make sure that you put a little bit of grease on the pedal thread. It doesn't need to be a whole lot, just a little bit, like that amount I suppose will be enough, so that when we put our pedal onto the thread, which is metal touching onto metal, in 5 years' time when we go to take it off, they won't be seized into place. This is more of a preventative measure. So now that we've got our little bit of grease on there, we're just gonna come down to the crank here. Now, one thing that I always like to make sure is that the pedals can spin freely backwards, like they're not gonna hit the wall behind us here. Remember before how we put the tool in the backside and we push down and around? This time, we're gonna be tightening over the top because now we're tightening it rather than loosening it. You might notice here that I'm also starting with just my fingers. I always recommend starting any bolt across the whole bike, especially the pedals, just starting with your fingers, even if you can just get the first maybe rotation or two just with your fingers before we start driving it home with our tool. Because if we're going in on any sort of angle that's anything other than perfect, we're going to completely ruin either the pedal or the crank arm, and you do not want to ruin the pedal or the crank arm. Now we'll turn it around and we'll do the non-drive side, the other side. So after you've greased the pedal, we're going to put it into there. And again, as we were saying on the other side before, we were pushing down and around, and this time we're going over the top. So I'm actually turning it this way. You can see that I'm turning it the opposite way of what I was with the other pedal. So once you've found that first thread with your fingers, it makes it a lot quicker and easier if you just hold that pedal spindle and just spin it backwards, and it's actually tightening as I'm spinning backwards. It just makes the whole job a little bit faster. Now that we've got them in there as hard as we can with our fingers or just loosely with the tool, now we're gonna make sure that it's nice and tight. My recommendation is putting the tool in facing forward now. I hold the back wheel and I'm gonna push down on that side there just to tighten it, because it's pulling up against the chain. The bike's trying to pedal forward, but I'm holding it still with my other hand here. So I'm just tightening it up, and now we're ready to go to the races. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you've learned a couple of things about how to remove and install your pedals. First of all, if you reckon that there's anything that we missed, please let us know in the comments below. I'm sure there's someone else that's wondering the same thing. Or perhaps if you were taught a different way and you've learned it a different way, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear the way that you were taught how to remove and install your pedals. Otherwise, even if you just want to see a video about different types of pedals, you would like us to make a video about clips and flats and expensive and cheap and whatever, anything to do with pedals, let us know in the comments below. I love reading through all the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video. See you guys.